Mount Cook Station a couple of summers ago, and a spectacular blaze roars out of control in a forest of self-sown wilding pines, Pinus contorta. 800 hectares of these weed trees went up in smoke after a hot chainsaw was placed on dry summer grass. You'd think the destruction of such a large stand of these pest trees would be a blessing in disguise. The trouble is, the heat opens the cones, which then release seeds to spread further infestations. The forest was also a safari park used for hunting elk in the main, and all up, the blaze cost $850,000. Instead of fire as the means of destruction for wilding pines, just south of Mount Cook to the east of Lake Pukaki, dock staff and contractors are hard at work for much of the year as helicopters drop them into remote areas to chop out wilding pines one by one. This area close to Arthur's Pass is a prime example of the spread of wilding pines. The main species by far is Pinus contorta, as the name suggests, a tree whose branches entwine with those of their neighbours, making for an impenetrable tangle. Also growing wild and marching across the landscape, other pest conifers are Douglas firs and Corsican pine. So how does DOC control these invaders?
Wilding pine control is a real case of a stitch in time save nine. So we ideally try and get in when infestations are just getting a hold and deal with seedlings and trees when they're small. So physical control, loppers, hand saws, hatchets. Very important in cutting down wilding pines to take all green needles off stems, because a lot of these species will regrow from stumps quite readily. Right. When they get bigger and take more of a hold, it's chainsaw control, taking out stands. So we'll do that with our own staff and with contractors. And now there's more work going on in establishing good herbicide mix for either application on the ground or from the air as well. So once we start looking at infestations that are in the thousands or tens of thousands of hectares, the helicopter becomes an essential part of the job, both for spotting trees and for just making the crews more efficient in controlling them. So we can put people on the ground, and often they'll walk down one spur and not see the tree that's just sort of 10 metres out to the side of them. But it's all about getting someone to the tree and removing the tree as quickly as possible and moving on to the next one. So we've tried to develop the systems with that in mind.
It looks like you have to drop them on some pretty steep remote slopes though.
Well, that's another point in favour of the helicopter access, really. We can get crews there in and out quickly.
These wilding pines got here thanks to a well-intentioned forestry experiment. The aim was to find out what varieties were best suited for planting, but the trees got out of control and to turn the Southern Alps into a facsimile of European or North American mountain country. Another problem with wilding pines is that the chances of harvesting commercially are very low, particularly in the South Island.
In parts of New Zealand they are harvested, but certainly in the South Island there's nothing that's commercially harvestable because of the difficulty in getting to it and the quality, or lack thereof, of the timber. So it's just not economic. We're constantly looking for ways of being able to get some sort of payback from them, but so far it's not been successful.
And particularly this pine you have to deal with here, contorta, that doesn't appear to have much trunk, it's all branches.
Yeah, it's absolutely useless for timber, and it's not much good for pulp either. And it's difficult to get to it, to cut it down, and difficult to cart it away, so that's the reason why so many of these trees are left in the more inaccessible areas.
It costs DOC $4 million a year to contain these pests, which cause so much damage to a fragile environment.
The first thing you'll notice is the effect on the landscape. So some of our iconic mountain vistas, as soon as the pines start coming up, they start changing.
Well, they look more like North America or Europe, don't they?
That's right, and it fills in to the point where you can no longer see the views from the road. And once you get to that point, the pines are really blocking out the native vegetation and taking away habitat from native species as well. So they grow very closely together, block out all the light, nothing else has a chance. They also take away from productive areas. So areas that are grazed The grazing will keep pine problems away to some extent, but the less intensive farming, they'll come in and they'll start taking over the country there too.
Attacking these pests with the chainsaw isn't the only tool in Doc's shed.
There's been a lot of innovation, and people from Doc and other organisations share good ideas. So some of the trees over the road have actually been mulched by rolling a huge mulcher. We've improved some of the control methods using scrub bars, and in some places we would use a herbicide to stump treat a tree if we're not sure that we've got all the green needles, because the big expense is getting somebody there. So if you're not sure, you give it a bit of herbicide. We're having relatively good success with some species, so Douglas fir and larch, we've been reasonably successful with. Each different pine species reacts in a different way, and different herbicides work. But when we're not only looking at just being able to spray over huge areas, we're looking at being able to target or spot spray individual trees, because we get inaccessible places where you've got really old tree spreading lots of seed, but you can't get anybody on the ground or the cliffside to actually do the work. So they've been working on that sort of thing as well.
As for the chances of total eradication, well, it might happen in a few areas, but most of these infestations of wilding pine, well, it's a matter of managing them and keeping their unwanted presence to a minimum. All Doc can do is come back in a few years and chop them out yet again.